Hey guys, tonight, we're stepping into a world that many people imagine as beautiful and honorable, the world of feudal Japan, a world of elegant temples, legendary samurai, ancient traditions, and breathtaking landscapes. But behind those famous images was a reality that was much harder than most people realize, because if you suddenly woke up in feudal Japan, you probably wouldn't be living like a samurai warrior from a movie. You would wake up without electricity, without modern medicine, without comfortable beds, and without the freedom to simply choose your own path. Your place in society would be decided before you were even born. A farmer would spend long days working the fields just to survive. A servant would spend years serving powerful families. A woman's life could be controlled by traditions she had no power to change. And even a samurai, despite their respected position, lived under strict rules of loyalty, discipline, and danger. Every meal, every journey, and every decision carried consequences. So tonight, we're going to quietly walk through the streets, homes, villages, and castles of feudal Japan. We'll discover what ordinary people ate, where they slept, how they worked, what they feared, and why surviving even one day in this world would be much harder than it appears, because history is not only about the great warriors and famous leaders, it is also about the millions of ordinary people who woke up every morning and tried to survive another day. So get comfortable, relax, and let's travel back hundreds of years to discover what life was really like in feudal Japan. Morning arrives more quietly than you expected, not with the gentle vibration of a phone or the distant hum of passing traffic, but with the soft chorus of insects hidden among the grasses, the call of birds greeting the sunrise, and the faint creak of timber settling after a cool night. Your eyes slowly open. Above you hangs a simple wooden roof, darkened by years of smoke from cooking fires. Thin shafts of golden sunlight slip through tiny gaps in the walls, painting narrow lines across a woven straw mat beneath you. For a few peaceful moments, everything feels strangely calm. Then you notice what is missing: no electric lights, no glass windows, no heating, no running water, no familiar sounds from the modern world, only silence, broken by nature itself. As you carefully sit upright, the room reveals its simplicity. A folded blanket rests neatly in one corner. A small clay pot waits beside a low wooden shelf. Every object seems to have earned its place through necessity rather than comfort. Outside, someone slides open a wooden door. Fresh morning air drifts inside, carrying the scent of damp earth, pine trees, and smoke rising from breakfast fires throughout the village. The day has already begun. Children carry bundles of firewood almost as tall as themselves. Elderly neighbors sweep narrow dirt paths with handmade brooms. Farmers shoulder wooden tools before the sun has fully climbed above the hills. Nobody appears rushed, yet nobody wastes a single movement. Time here is measured by sunlight, seasons, and survival. You step outside barefoot. The ground feels cool beneath your feet, still wet with morning dew. Tiny droplets cling to wild grasses as mist hangs lazily above nearby rice fields, giving the valley an almost dreamlike beauty. In the distance, mountains surround the village like quiet guardians, their forests wrapped in pale blue haze. It is breathtaking, and yet, beneath that beauty lies uncertainty. You quickly realize that you are an outsider. Your clothes seem unusual. Your posture feels unfamiliar. Even the way you look around attracts curious glances. People do not greet strangers casually here. Instead, they quietly observe. Every village is a small world where everyone knows one another, where unfamiliar faces invite cautious questions rather than warm welcomes. You instinctively reach toward your pocket. There is no phone, no wallet, no identification, no comforting reminder of the life you left behind, only empty hands. For the first time, the true weight of your situation begins to settle in. This is not a temporary visit. This world expects you to understand its rules, even though no one has explained them. A nearby temple bell echoes softly across the valley. Its slow, steady sound rolls over rooftops, fields, and distant forests like gentle waves across still water. Villagers pause for only a brief moment before continuing their work. Life does not stop, it simply continues, exactly as it did yesterday, and exactly as it will tomorrow. You take one slow breath. The air feels cleaner than anything you remember, yet strangely heavier with responsibility. Because every choice you make from this moment forward carries consequences you cannot yet imagine. The peaceful morning has welcomed you gently, but as the village awakens around you, another realization quietly follows. Surviving this beautiful world will require far more than simply opening your eyes, and before this first day is over, you will begin to understand just how little separates comfort from hardship. The morning settles gently around you, as though the village has quietly accepted the arrival of another sunrise, but not necessarily the arrival of you. The mist has begun to lift from the rice fields, revealing neat rows of emerald shoots stretching toward the distant hills. Smoke curls lazily from thatched rooftops, carrying the comforting scent of wood fires and simmering millet. It is peaceful enough to make you forget, if only for a moment, how fragile your place here truly is. You begin walking along the narrow dirt path. No signs point the way. No maps hang on walls. Every twisting lane seems familiar only to those who have spent their entire lives here. The village is a living memory, built from habits passed from one generation to the next. Everyone seems to know exactly where they belong. You do not. A woman balancing two wooden buckets suspended from a shoulder pole steps aside without speaking. An elderly man pauses briefly, offering only the slightest nod before continuing his careful work of repairing a bamboo fence. Their silence is not unkind, it is cautious. In feudal Japan, strangers were uncommon. A village depended upon trust. Every face was recognized. Every family carried a reputation stretching back decades, sometimes centuries. An unfamiliar visitor naturally invited quiet suspicion. You smile politely, no one smiles back, not because they wish you harm, but because customs are different here. Warm friendliness is reserved for people who have earned it. Respect comes before comfort. Already, your modern instincts begin to betray you. You reach toward a child who has been watching you from behind a wooden cart, hoping to reassure them with a friendly wave. Instead, the child quickly disappears inside a nearby house. The adults notice. No one says anything, yet you can almost feel invisible eyes following every uncertain step you take. Even standing incorrectly can draw attention. Bowing too little might appear disrespectful. Bowing too deeply to the wrong person might seem equally strange. Speaking too confidently could be mistaken for arrogance. Speaking too softly may suggest dishonesty. The rules are unwritten, but everyone knows them, except you. As the sun climbs higher, another problem quietly emerges. You are hungry. In your own world, hunger is often solved within minutes. A nearby cafe, a market, a delivery app. Countless choices exist without much thought. Here, food belongs to someone. Every grain of rice represents weeks of labor beneath the sun. Every vegetable has been carefully grown, harvested, and preserved. Even clean water often requires effort to collect. Nothing is casually offered away. You cannot simply ask for a meal without also offering something in return. But your pockets remain empty. No coins, no trade goods, nothing of value. For the first time, you begin to understand that survival depends not only upon strength, but usefulness. Nearby, farmers bend silently over flooded fields, their reflections shimmering in the shallow water. Their movements are slow, practiced, almost rhythmic. Hours pass beneath the growing warmth without complaint. Life here leaves little room for idleness. Every pair of hands must contribute. Even children gather kindling, feed animals, or carry water before many modern families would have finished breakfast. As afternoon approaches, clouds drift lazily across the sky. The beauty remains almost overwhelming. Dragonflies skim across irrigation channels. A gentle breeze stirs the bamboo groves. Somewhere beyond the trees, the distant sound of a wooden flute rises for only a few moments before fading once again into silence. It feels almost magical, yet beauty cannot protect you from reality. Without knowing local dialects, customs, family ties, or practical skills, each passing hour makes your situation more uncertain. You would struggle to explain where you came from. You would struggle to earn trust. You would struggle to earn tomorrow's meal. As evening slowly approaches, the village changes once again. Families gather inside their homes before darkness fully arrives. Lamps fueled by vegetable oil cast soft golden light through paper screens. Doors slide shut one after another. The pathways become quiet. There are no glowing streetlights, no comforting city skyline, only darkness stretching across fields and forests. The night belongs to different sounds now: rustling leaves, distant owls, frogs calling from the paddies, and unseen creatures moving somewhere beyond the edges of the village. You realize there is nowhere waiting for you, no reserved bed, no familiar home. No certainty that anyone will invite you inside. The first day has not ended with dramatic danger. It has ended with something quieter, the unsettling understanding that surviving this world is not about winning a battle, it is about belonging. And in feudal Japan, belonging could take an entire lifetime to earn. Morning returns almost unnoticed. The first light slips across the rooftops just as it did yesterday, calm, patient, and completely indifferent to your worries. A rooster calls from somewhere beyond the village, followed by the gentle rustle of bamboo swaying in the breeze. The world awakens according to a rhythm that has been repeated for generations, yet today, you begin to notice something you missed before. The village is not simply a collection of homes. It is a carefully arranged world where every person already knows their place. As you continue along the narrow paths, people move with quiet purpose. A farmer carries bundles of seedlings toward the paddies. An elderly woman kneels outside her home, weaving straw sandals with practiced hands. Children fetch water without being asked, understanding their responsibilities long before reaching adulthood. No one seems confused about what tomorrow will bring. Their future has already been written, not by dreams, but by birth. In feudal Japan, society was built like a tall mountain. At its peak stood the shogun, the military ruler whose authority reached across the land. Beneath him served powerful regional lords known as daimyo, each governing vast territories through loyalty, wealth, and carefully maintained alliances. Below them stood the samurai. Many stories remember them as fearless warriors carrying polished swords beneath fluttering banners. The truth was quieter. Most samurai spent far more time managing land, collecting taxes, studying literature, or serving their lord than charging into glorious battles. Discipline shaped every hour of their lives. Their swords were symbols of responsibility as much as weapons. Below the samurai came the farmers. To modern ears, this may seem surprising. Farmers possessed little wealth, worked exhausting days, and often struggled through poor harvests. Yet they occupied an honored place because they produced rice, the foundation of the entire economy. Without their labor, every castle, temple, and town would slowly fall silent. After farmers came skilled artisans. Carpenters shaped elegant wooden homes without using nails. Blacksmiths patiently forged farming tools and carefully balanced sword blades. Potters transformed ordinary clay into bowls that would remain in families for decades. Every craft demanded years of quiet practice. Finally came the merchants. Today, successful business often brings admiration in feudal Japan. It was different. Although many merchants eventually became wealthy, they ranked low within the social order because they earned profit from goods produced by others rather than creating them directly. Status did not always follow money, it followed tradition, and outside this carefully ordered world lived people who faced even greater hardship. Certain occupations considered impure, such as working with leather or handling the dead, were pushed to the edges of society. Entire families could remain separated from others for generations, not because of anything they had chosen, but because of the work they inherited. For someone arriving from the modern world, these invisible boundaries would feel impossible to understand. You might greet someone too casually, you might stand where you should not, you might unknowingly interrupt a conversation between people of higher rank. None of these actions would come from disrespect, yet intention mattered less than appearance. Respect was communicated through countless small details: the angle of a bow, the words you selected, where you sat today, who spoke first. Even clothing quietly announced your place in society. Simple hemp garments belonged to ordinary villagers. Fine silk robes, carefully dyed and embroidered, reflected privilege earned through birth or service. Family crests stitched onto fabric told stories before a single word had been spoken. Without realizing it, your appearance would immediately reveal that something was unusual. As the afternoon sunlight filters through cedar trees, you notice how naturally everyone accepts these invisible rules. There is little open argument, not because life is always fair, but because generations have grown up believing that harmony depends upon each person fulfilling their role. Freedom, as you understand it, is a distant idea. Here, duty comes first. Personal ambition waits quietly behind family obligation, village expectation, and loyalty to those above you. As evening approaches, lanterns begin glowing once again behind paper screens. Their gentle light softens the sharp edges of the day. You find yourself wondering which life would have become yours. Would you have spent your mornings planting rice beneath the summer sun? Would you have learned to carve wood beside your father? Would you have carried 2 swords as a samurai, bound by honor as tightly as any chain? Or would your future have been decided before you ever took your first breath? The village settles into peaceful silence from a distance. Every home appears equal beneath the fading light, but hidden behind those quiet walls, every family lives within a place carefully chosen by history. And tomorrow, you will begin to discover what life truly felt like for the people who carried the greatest burden of all. They were not kings or warriors, but the countless ordinary farmers whose hands quietly sustained an entire nation. Another dawn arrives, not with excitement, but with quiet expectation. The darkness outside slowly fades into shades of pale blue and soft gold. A cool breeze slips through the wooden walls, carrying the familiar scent of damp earth and growing rice. Somewhere nearby, a rooster calls into the morning mist, answered only by the distant splash of water flowing through carefully carved irrigation channels. Long before the sun rises above the mountains, the village is already awake. This time, you follow the people who rarely appear in paintings of great castles or tales of famous warriors. You follow the farmers, For nearly every ordinary person in feudal Japan, life began before first light. There was no luxury of sleeping in. The fields waited for no one, and the seasons never slowed their steady march. Inside a modest farmhouse, a family prepares for another day. The home is simple: wooden beams darkened by years of smoke, woven straw mats covering the floor, a small cooking fire glowing quietly in the center of the room. Breakfast is modest and practical. A bowl of thin rice porridge, perhaps a few pickled vegetables if the harvest has been kind, and warm tea. No one lingers over the meal. Every moment before sunrise is precious. Outside, the fields stretch across the valley like mirrors, reflecting the growing light of dawn. Water fills the rice paddies, turning each step into a careful balance between soft mud and shallow pools. You remove your sandals. The earth is cold. With your first step into the flooded field, thick mud rises between your toes. It is heavier than you expected, clinging to every movement. Soon, your legs begin to ache as you try to keep your balance. The farmers barely seem to notice. Years of repetition have taught their bodies exactly how to move. Bent at the waist, they carefully press young rice shoots into the mud, one by one, row after row. There is no hurry, only steady rhythm. Splash, step, plant. Splash, step, plant. The work continues hour after hour. The sun slowly climbs higher. Morning coolness gives way to humid warmth. Sweat gathers beneath simple hemp clothing, while insects drift lazily above the standing water. Occasionally, someone straightens their back for a single deep breath before bending once more toward the earth. No complaints are spoken, not because the work is easy, but because it simply must be done. Rice is more than food, it is survival. It pays taxes, feeds families, and supports every level of society above them. A poor harvest does not merely mean smaller meals. It can mean debt, hunger, or the quiet fear that winter may arrive before enough grain has been stored. Nature decides much of their fate. Too little rain, the fields dry and crack. Too much rain, floods wash away months of careful labor. A single violent storm can undo an entire season, and there is nothing anyone can do except begin again. As midday arrives, the workers gather briefly beneath the shade of a broad tree. Their meal is small. A handful of rice, perhaps a few preserved vegetables, maybe a piece of dried fish for those fortunate enough to afford it. Conversation remains gentle. They speak of weather, crops, neighboring villages, and hopes for a healthy harvest. Their dreams are rarely grand. Good weather, healthy children, enough food until next spring, simple wishes. Yet precious ones, by afternoon, the work begins again. The valley hums softly with life. Dragonflies glide across the paddies. Frogs disappear beneath the water's surface. Wind ripples through bamboo forests surrounding the fields, creating a quiet whisper that almost hides the sound of countless careful footsteps in the mud. Hours blend together. The rhythm becomes almost hypnotic. You begin to understand why patience was one of the greatest skills a farmer could possess. There are no shortcuts here, only seasons. As the sun finally begins its slow descent, the workers gather their tools. Their backs ache, their hands are rough. Their clothing is damp with sweat and muddy water. Yet before returning home, many pause for one last look across the fields. Rows of young rice catch the golden evening light, swaying gently beneath the breeze. It is not pride born from wealth. It is quieter than that. It is the quiet satisfaction of knowing another day's work has been completed. Tomorrow, they will rise before dawn and begin again. As you walk back toward the village beneath a sky painted with soft shades of amber and violet, One thought lingers in your mind: the castles of feudal Japan may have symbolized power, but they stood only because countless ordinary farmers, season after season, placed one careful step into the mud and never stopped moving. Morning returns once again. This time, the village awakens not to the sound of work alone, but to the quiet promise of another simple meal. Thin streams of smoke drift lazily from the rooftops, disappearing into the cool morning air. Somewhere nearby, a wooden ladle gently stirs a pot suspended above glowing coals, while the faint aroma of steaming rice mixes with the scent of cedar and damp earth. You may have imagined that life in feudal Japan was filled with endless bowls of perfectly polished rice, colorful feasts, and elegant banquets. For most people, it was nothing like that. The first thing you would notice is how precious food truly is in your own time. A meal can be forgotten within minutes. A refrigerator waits patiently in the kitchen, markets overflow with choices, and seasons matter far less than they once did. Here, every grain carries a story, every bowl represents months of careful labor beneath changing skies. Inside a farmer's home, breakfast is already waiting. It is modest enough to fit comfortably in two hands, a bowl of rice, if the harvest has been generous. More often, it is a thin porridge stretched with extra water to make precious grain last a little longer. Alongside it rests a few pickled vegetables, perhaps daikon radish, turnips, or plums preserved months earlier when the fields were more forgiving. Nothing is wasted, not a single mouthful. Even the smallest scraps are saved for another meal or shared with animals that help the household survive. As you take your first bite, the flavor surprises you. It is gentle, almost quiet. There are no rich sauces, no heavy spices, no sweetness flooding the tongue. Instead, every ingredient speaks softly for itself. Warm rice, salty pickles, a hint of earthy vegetables, simple food prepared with quiet care. Fish appears more often than meat, especially in villages near rivers or the coast. Fresh fish might be grilled over charcoal, while others are dried beneath the sun to preserve them for colder months. Meat from larger animals is surprisingly rare. For centuries, religious beliefs and practical concerns meant that cattle and horses were valued far more for farming and transport than for the dinner table. Hunting did occur in some regions, but it was never an everyday luxury for ordinary families. Instead, meals followed the rhythm of nature. Spring brought tender mountain greens, summer offered cucumbers, beans, and herbs. Autumn filled baskets with mushrooms, chestnuts, and sweet potatoes in later centuries. Winter asked people to depend upon whatever they had wisely preserved. The changing seasons decided the menu long before anyone entered the kitchen. Tea quietly accompanies many meals. Unlike the sweet drinks you may know today, this tea is plain, warm, and comforting. It offers a brief moment of stillness before another long day of work begins. Even children learn early not to complain about what is placed before them. Food is a gift earned through patience, not preference. As afternoon approaches, you wander toward the village marketplace. It is smaller than you expected. Wooden stalls display bundles of fresh vegetables, woven baskets of grain, dried seaweed, tofu, and carefully wrapped blocks of miso. The merchants speak calmly with their customers, exchanging goods as much through trust as through coins. Nothing feels hurried. People buy only what they truly need. Luxury exists, but only for a fortunate few. Within the great castles of powerful lords, elaborate meals may include delicate seafood, fine rice, rare fruits, and beautifully arranged dishes served on polished lacquerware. Yet those grand tables belong to another world. The ordinary villager rarely sees such abundance. As evening settles across the valley, families once again gather around small cooking fires. The day's final meal resembles the first: simple, warm, familiar. There is comfort in its repetition. Outside, the fields grow quiet beneath the fading light. Inside each home, bowls are carefully emptied, chopsticks gently placed aside, and gratitude lingers in the silence that follows. No one expects extravagance, only enough, and perhaps. That is the greatest difference you would notice. In the modern world, food often becomes entertainment, convenience, or distraction. Here, it remains something far more honest, a daily reminder that survival depends upon the land, the weather, and the patient hands willing to work from dawn until dusk. As the last embers glow softly beneath the cooking pot, another realization settles gently beside you. Tomorrow morning, you will wake once again to the same humble meal, not because life lacks variety, but because consistency itself is a quiet form of security, and soon, you will discover that even the place where you rest your head each night offers little comfort by modern standards, yet somehow becomes a home all the same. Night settles gently over the village. One by one, the warm glows behind paper windows begin to fade. Conversations grow quieter. The crackling of cooking fires slowly gives way to the soft chorus of crickets hidden among the grasses. Somewhere in the distance, a stream continues its endless journey through the valley, its gentle murmur becoming the soundtrack of another peaceful evening. After a long day in the fields, you finally return to the place that will be your home, at least for tonight. From the outside, the house looks inviting enough. Its sloping thatched roof blends naturally into the surrounding landscape, while the wooden walls seem almost to breathe with the cool evening air. There is no lock on the sliding door, no polished stone entrance, no glass windows reflecting moonlight. Instead, everything feels wonderfully simple and surprisingly fragile. As you step inside, you instinctively look for the comforts you have always taken for granted: a bed, a pillow, a thick blanket. You find none of them. The room is almost empty. Tatami mats cover the floor, their woven straw carrying the faint, earthy scent of dried grass. The walls are made of paper stretched over delicate wooden frames. During the day, these shoji screens allow soft sunlight to fill the room. At night, they become little more than thin barriers between you and the outside world. You quickly realize something unexpected: the house is never completely silent. The wind whispers through tiny gaps in the wood, rain taps gently upon the thatched roof, the distant call of an owl drifts across the fields. Even the floor seems to sigh softly as the timber settles after the warmth of the day. Nature is always present. There is no escaping it. When bedtime finally arrives, a rolled futon is carefully unfolded across the tatami. Compared to the thick mattresses of the modern world, it feels remarkably thin. At first, the woven floor presses firmly against your shoulders and hips. Every movement reminds you that comfort was never the purpose of these sleeping arrangements. Practicality was. Each morning, the futon can be rolled away, allowing the same room to become a dining area, a workspace, or a place for family gatherings. Space is too valuable to dedicate to permanent furniture. Life here is wonderfully adaptable, yet not always comfortable. As you settle beneath a simple quilt, another thought quietly enters your mind: there is no central heating. Winter in feudal Japan could be deeply unforgiving. Snow-covered villages in the northern provinces for months at a time. Cold wind slipped easily through wooden walls, while frost formed along the edges of paper screens. Before sunrise, families gathered around a small sunken hearth known as an irori, where a modest fire provided warmth for cooking and conversation alike. Everyone remained close to the glowing embers, sharing both heat and stories as darkness settled outside. Even then, the cold often lingered, hands became numb, breath appeared in pale clouds. Blankets alone were rarely enough. Summer brought the opposite challenge: the heavy, humid air settled over the valleys like an invisible blanket. Without electric fans or air conditioning, every afternoon seemed to stretch endlessly beneath the heat. Windows and sliding doors were opened wide whenever possible, inviting fresh breezes to pass through the home. Bamboo blinds softened the sunlight, while families rested briefly during the hottest hours before returning to their work. Mosquitoes arrived with the warmth, so did countless other insects. Their constant buzzing became another ordinary part of life. The changing seasons shaped every home. Roofs required constant repair after storms. Wooden beams expanded and contracted with shifting temperatures. Heavy rain sometimes leaked through aging thatch, leaving families to patch their roofs before the next downpour arrived. Even earthquakes were accepted as part of living upon these islands. Homes were built with flexibility in mind, their wooden frames bending rather than resisting the trembling earth. Strength came not from refusing nature, but from adapting to it. As midnight approaches, moonlight filters softly through the paper screens, painting pale silver patterns across the tatami floor. You lie awake for a while, listening. There are no engines, no distant sirens, no glowing screens demanding your attention, only the steady rhythm of insects, wind, and breathing. Slowly, your eyes begin to close. Perhaps comfort is not always measured by softness. Perhaps it can also be found in simplicity, in quiet, and in the gentle certainty that tomorrow's sunrise will arrive just as faithfully as today's. Outside, the first cool breeze before dawn begins to stir the bamboo once more. A new day is already waiting, and with it comes another lesson, not about homes, but about the countless unwritten rules that quietly governed every moment of life in Feudal Japan. Another morning quietly unfolds. A pale ribbon of sunlight slips across the tatami floor, gently replacing the silver glow of the moon. Outside, the village stirs with familiar sounds. A wooden bucket touches the edge of a well. Sandals brush softly against the dirt paths. Somewhere nearby, a temple bell rings once, then fades into the cool morning air. By now, the rhythm of feudal Japan is beginning to feel almost familiar. You know when the farmers leave for the fields. You recognize the scent of wood smoke drifting through the village. You understand why every meal is simple, why every home is modest, and why every day begins before the sun fully rises. But today, you discover something far less visible. The invisible rules, unlike the walls of a castle or the boundaries of a rice field, these rules cannot be seen. Yet they shape every conversation, every decision, and nearly every step a person takes. It is almost as if the entire village is following a carefully rehearsed performance, one that everyone learned as children, everyone except you. You notice it first when two villagers meet along a narrow path. Before a single word is spoken, both bow, not deeply, not casually, just enough. The movement is graceful, almost effortless. And over in a heartbeat, to an outsider, it seems simple. In reality, that single bow carries layers of meaning. It reflects respect. It acknowledges age, status, and familiarity. It quietly reminds each person of their place in the world. Getting it wrong could leave an uncomfortable silence hanging in the air long after the greeting had ended. As you continue walking, another lesson appears. No one interrupts an elder who is speaking. Children listen patiently, even when they are restless. Young apprentices watch carefully before attempting a task themselves. Knowledge is passed down like a treasured family heirloom, not rushed, not questioned at every opportunity. Earned. You begin to realize that life here is built upon obedience as much as effort. Families expect loyalty. Villages expect cooperation. Lords expect service. Even personal emotions are often kept hidden beneath calm expressions. Harmony is valued more highly than individual opinion. To stand apart from the group is not admired, it is unsettling. This way of thinking reaches into every corner of daily life. The clothing you wear reflects your place in society. The words you choose change depending on whom you are addressing. Even where you sit inside a room matters. The most honored guest sits farthest from the entrance, protected from unexpected danger and closest to the place of respect. Without knowing it, you might choose the wrong seat, a small mistake, yet one everyone would notice. As afternoon sunlight filters through the cedar trees, you witness a disagreement between two neighbors. It surprises you because there is almost no raised voice, no shouting, no dramatic display of anger. Instead, both speak quietly, carefully, almost cautiously. Maintaining dignity is often considered more important than winning the argument itself. That does not mean punishments are gentle, far from it. Feudal Japan could be remarkably strict. Local officials enforced laws that preserved order, and serious crimes often received severe penalties. Stealing food during difficult times, ignoring one's obligations, openly defying authority, such actions carried consequences that extended beyond the individual. Entire families could lose honor because of one person's behavior. Reputation was precious. Once damaged, it could take generations to restore. Honor was not an abstract idea. It was a form of social survival. You slowly begin to understand why everyone seems so careful. Their measured words, their graceful movements, their quiet patience, these are not signs of fear alone. They are habits shaped by centuries of tradition. As evening approaches, lanterns once again glow softly. Behind paper screens, families gather inside their homes, removing their sandals before stepping onto clean tatami floors. A simple act, yet another rule, another quiet reminder that respect begins with the smallest gestures. You find yourself pausing before entering. Almost without thinking, you remove your own shoes. For the first time since arriving here, the movement feels natural. Perhaps you are beginning to learn, not because anyone explained these customs to you, but because this world teaches through observation rather than instruction. Its lessons are whispered instead of shouted, passed from one generation to the next without books, signs, or written reminders. Outside, the evening breeze stirs the bamboo, creating a soft rustling that blends with the distant sound of flowing water. The village settles peacefully into another night. Yet somewhere beyond these quiet homes lives a group of people whose names have echoed through history for centuries. Warriors dressed in layered armor, carriers of two swords, servants of powerful lords. Tomorrow, you will finally come face to face with the legendary samurai and discover that the truth behind their lives is far more complex and far more human than the legends would have you believe. Morning arrives beneath a sky washed in pale silver. A light mist hangs between the cedar trees, softening the outlines of distant hills until they seem almost like memories. Dew clings to every blade of grass, and the village awakens with the same familiar rhythm you have come to know: quiet footsteps, creaking wooden doors, and smoke rising from cooking fires. But today, something feels different. The villagers glance toward the road more often than usual. Conversations become softer. Children who were laughing only moments ago suddenly stand a little straighter. No one appears frightened, only respectful. Then you hear them, the slow, steady sound of sandals pressing against the packed earth. Not hurried, not theatrical, measured. Around the bend in the road, a small group of samurai comes into view. If your only knowledge came from modern films, you might expect glittering armor, dramatic music, and hands constantly resting upon sword hilts. Instead, the reality is almost surprisingly quiet. Their clothing is practical. Most wear layered robes beneath simple traveling garments. Only one carries full armor, likely because he has come directly from another duty. The lacquered plates catch the morning light, but they are marked by scratches and careful repairs rather than polished perfection. Their swords remain sheathed, no one reaches for them. The villagers bow as the samurai pass. Not out of terror, but because this is simply the proper thing to do, the samurai return the gesture with small nods. There is little need for words. By now, you understand that respect in feudal Japan often speaks most clearly through silence. As the group pauses beside a small shrine, you notice something unexpected. One samurai removes a writing brush and carefully records notes onto a scroll. Another quietly discusses the condition of nearby irrigation channels with the village headman. There are no duels, no heroic speeches, no flashing blades. The legendary warriors are occupied with administration. It may seem surprising, but during long periods of peace, many samurai spent far more time governing than fighting. They collected taxes, resolved disputes, inspected roads, managed supplies, and represented the authority of their lord. Their education reflected these responsibilities. A respected samurai was expected to study calligraphy, poetry, philosophy, and history. Alongside martial skills, a sharp mind was considered just as valuable as a sharp sword. Of course, training with weapons never truly stopped. Beyond the village, in a quiet clearing surrounded by tall pines, several younger samurai practice beneath the watchful eye of an older instructor. The movements are slow, deliberate. Wooden practice swords meet with gentle echoes that disappear into the forest. Every step is repeated again and again until it becomes effortless. Discipline matters more than speed. Precision matters more than strength. The instructor rarely raises his voice. Instead, he corrects a misplaced foot, adjusts the angle of a wrist, reminds his students that true mastery begins with patience. You watch for several minutes before realizing something remarkable. The greatest lesson being taught is not how to defeat an enemy, it is how to master oneself. As afternoon sunlight filters through the trees, you notice the weight each samurai quietly carries. Their loyalty belongs to their daimyo above all else. Personal desires often come second. Family, reputation, and duty are woven together so tightly that separating them becomes almost impossible. A single poor decision could stain an entire household. Success brings honor. Failure lingers. This burden follows them every day, even during peaceful years. Despite their respected position, many samurai lived modestly. Some struggled financially as the centuries passed. Maintaining armor, weapons, horses, and proper appearance demanded considerable expense, while periods of peace reduced opportunities for military reward. The image of endless wealth belonged only to a fortunate few. For many, life required careful balance between status and reality. As evening approaches, the samurai prepare to continue their journey. They pause briefly at the edge of the village. One last quiet conversation. One final bow. Then they disappear into the winding road. Beneath the cedar trees, the villagers slowly return to their work. Children begin laughing once again. The fields continue shimmering beneath the setting sun. Life resumes its familiar rhythm. Standing there, you realize that history has transformed the samurai into legends, yet legends often smooth away the ordinary details. The waiting, the paperwork, the responsibility, the endless discipline, the quiet sacrifices hidden behind polished swords. Perhaps that is what makes them truly fascinating, not because they were larger than life, but because they were human beings asked to live by ideals almost impossible to uphold. The evening breeze carries the scent of pine and wood smoke across the valley as darkness slowly settles once more. Tomorrow, your path will finally leave the safety of the village, Beyond these peaceful fields stretch winding roads through mountains and forests, where travelers discover that the greatest danger is not always waiting with a drawn sword. Sometimes it is simply waiting around the next bend. The sun rises slowly behind the mountains, its first rays spill across the valley, turning the morning mist into rivers of pale gold. The village behind you is only beginning to awaken. Smoke curls lazily from familiar rooftops, and somewhere in the distance, the temple bell marks the beginning of another ordinary day. But today, you do something few villagers would do without a good reason. You leave. The narrow path that carried farmers to their fields now stretches beyond the last rice paddies, disappearing into forests that seem endless. With every step, the comforting sounds of the village grow softer until they vanish completely, replaced by birdsong, rustling leaves, and the gentle creak of tall bamboo bending in the wind. For a while, the journey feels almost peaceful. The road is little more than packed earth, shaped by countless sandals, wooden carts, and horse hooves over generations. Moss-covered stones line certain stretches, while ancient cedar trees stand like quiet guardians along the way, their trunks wider than several people standing side by side. The air smells wonderfully fresh: pine needles, wet soil, mountain streams. It is easy to understand why travelers often pause simply to admire the landscape, yet beauty could be wonderfully deceptive. Unlike modern highways, these roads offered very little certainty. A sudden storm could transform a gentle path into deep mud. Rivers that seemed harmless in the morning could become impossible to cross after heavy rain. Fallen trees, landslides, or swollen streams might force travelers to take unfamiliar routes through dense forests. There were no signposts to guide you, only memory, or local knowledge. Without both, it would be surprisingly easy to become lost. As the morning passes, you meet other travelers. A Buddhist monk walks alone, his straw hat shielding him from the growing sunlight. Each measured step seems almost like a quiet meditation. Around his shoulder hangs a small bundle containing little more than robes, prayer beads, and a wooden bowl. Further along the road, a merchant carefully leads two pack horses carrying cloth, pottery, and dried goods toward the next market town. Every item has been packed with remarkable care. One broken jar could erase weeks of profit. Travel was rarely casual. Everyone had a purpose. Pilgrims journeyed to sacred temples, officials carried important messages, artisans searched for work, farmers visited neighboring villages during festivals or market days. Every journey demanded preparation. As midday approaches, the road widens near a small checkpoint. A wooden gate stands across the path, watched by armed guards wearing the crest of the local lord. Nobody passes without being noticed. Travel during the Edo period, especially, became carefully regulated. Many people required official permission to move between domains. Travelers presented documents proving who they were, where they had come from, and where they intended to go. For someone like you, this would become a serious problem. No papers, no family records, no explanation anyone would believe. Questions would come quickly, answers would be difficult. Fortunately for today's traveler, the guards are occupied with another group. You quietly observe from a respectful distance, realizing how closely movement itself could be controlled. Freedom existed, but it often walked beside responsibility. Beyond the checkpoint, the road narrows once again. The forest grows thicker. Sunlight filters gently through layers of maple, cedar, and pine, creating shifting patterns upon the earth below. It is peaceful, perhaps too peaceful. Stories of bandits traveled almost as widely as merchants themselves. Not every road was dangerous, and many journeys ended without trouble. but isolated stretches through mountains offered opportunities for thieves willing to risk severe punishment. Most travelers preferred company whenever possible. Several strangers walking together were far less inviting targets than someone wandering alone. As evening begins to approach, you finally reach a small roadside inn. Its wooden sign sways gently above the entrance. Inside, weary travelers remove their sandals and gather around simple meals of rice, soup, and tea. Conversations remain soft, filled with stories of weather, road conditions, and villages visited along the way. For a brief moment, the road feels less lonely. Everyone here understands the quiet uncertainty of travel. They know that tomorrow's destination depends upon good weather, healthy feet, and a little fortune. As darkness settles outside, paper lanterns cast warm pools of light across the wooden floor. You listen to the wind moving through the trees beyond the walls. The road never truly sleeps. Somewhere out there, another traveler is still walking. Beneath the stars, another merchant is protecting precious cargo. Another pilgrim is following a path of faith, and somewhere beyond the next mountain, another story is waiting to be discovered. You close your eyes, grateful for shelter, because tomorrow, your journey will continue into a different part of this remarkable world, where life was shaped not by lonely roads or quiet villages, but by the unseen strength of women whose daily burdens rarely found their way into history books, yet quietly held countless households together. Morning arrives with the gentle sound of rain. Small droplets gather along the edge of the thatched roof before falling into shallow puddles below. Mist hangs low over the village, softening every outline until the houses seem to drift quietly within the clouds. The familiar dirt paths have become darker with moisture, and the scent of wet cedar fills the cool air. As you walk through the village once more, something begins to stand out. For days, your attention has followed farmers in the fields, merchants on the roads, and samurai carrying out their duties. But now, you begin to notice the people whose work has quietly surrounded every chapter of this journey, the women. History often remembers famous generals, powerful lords, and legendary warriors, yet inside nearly every home in feudal Japan, women carried responsibilities that never appeared on battle maps or official records. Before the first light reached the valley, many were already awake. Inside a modest farmhouse, a mother kneels beside the hearth, carefully coaxing a small fire to life. She feeds slender pieces of wood beneath a clay cooking pot while the rest of the household still sleeps. Steam slowly rises into the cool morning air, carrying the comforting scent of rice porridge. The day has barely begun, and her work is already underway. Soon, she steps outside with wooden buckets balanced across a shoulder pole. The well stands at the edge of the village. The journey is not long, but it will be repeated again and again. Water is needed for cooking, for washing, for drinking, for the animals. Every bucket must be carried home by hand. There are no taps to turn, no pipes hidden beneath the ground, only patience. As the morning grows brighter, children begin to stir, clothing is mended, meals are served, young faces are washed. The smallest members of the family are watched carefully while older children prepare for another day of helping in the fields or around the home. There is little time to rest. Even after breakfast, countless tasks remain. Vegetables are gathered from small garden plots. Clothes are washed beside the stream, rubbed carefully against smooth stones before being hung to dry in the breeze. Bundles of firewood are stacked neatly beside the house. Grain is sorted. Tea is prepared. Needles move patiently through worn fabric, extending the life of garments that cannot easily be replaced. Nothing is discarded unless it has truly reached the end of its usefulness. Every object has value. Every hour has purpose. Marriage, too, often followed the needs of families rather than the wishes of individuals. many unions were arranged to strengthen relationships between households, improve financial stability, or preserve local traditions. Love sometimes grew with time, sometimes it remained quiet. Either way, duty usually came first. For women born into samurai families, life carried different expectations. They were taught to manage households with efficiency and dignity. Especially when husbands traveled or served their lord, some even learned to defend their homes using the naginata, a long pole weapon practiced by women of certain warrior families. Yet these moments of martial training represented only a small part of daily life. Most responsibilities remained centered upon the home. The quiet strength required to guide a household through changing seasons was no less important than carrying a sword. As afternoon sunlight finally breaks through the clouds, you notice elderly women sitting together beneath the eaves of a wooden house. Their hands move steadily as they weave baskets from thin strips of bamboo. Conversation drifts gently between them. Stories of grandchildren, memories of difficult winters, advice passed from one generation to another. Knowledge travels softly here, not through books alone, but through countless conversations shared over years of ordinary life. As evening approaches, lanterns begin glowing once again behind paper screens. Families gather for another simple meal. Children laugh quietly. An infant sleeps peacefully against its mother's shoulder. For a few precious moments, the day's endless work fades into the background. There is warmth here, not the warmth of luxury, but the warmth created by people caring for one another despite lives filled with constant effort. Looking around the room, you realize how much history often overlooks. Castles still stand, ancient swords rest inside museums, the names of great warriors remain carved into memory, but countless women who cooked the meals, carried the water, raised the children, mended the clothing, preserved traditions, and quietly held families together, left behind almost no monuments, only lives that continued through those they loved. Outside, the rain has finally stopped. The moon emerges between drifting clouds, casting a gentle silver light across the sleeping village. Tomorrow, your journey will lead you beyond the family itself, into the great households of powerful lords, where another hidden world quietly exists behind polished wooden doors, a world sustained by servants whose names history rarely remembered, but whose work touched every corner of noble life. The rain has disappeared by morning, only a few droplets remain, clinging to bamboo leaves like tiny pearls. The sky above the valley is clear once again, painted in soft shades of gold and pale blue. Birds move through the gardens, and the village slowly awakens to another ordinary day. But today, your path leads away from the familiar farmhouses, away from the rice fields, away from the modest homes where most families spend their lives. Instead, you travel toward a large estate belonging to a powerful lord. From a distance, it appears impressive. White plaster walls rise above carefully maintained grounds. Dark wooden gates stand tall beneath tiled roofs. Pine trees have been trimmed with deliberate care, and stone pathways wind through gardens where every detail seems thoughtfully arranged. At first glance, it feels like a different world, a world of comfort, a world of privilege. Yet as you step closer, you begin to notice something important. This place does not function because of the lord who owns it. It functions because of the countless people working quietly behind the scenes, the servants, long before the household awakens. They are already moving through the corridors. A young servant slides open wooden shutters to welcome the morning light. Another sweeps fallen leaves from the garden paths before anyone else sees them. In the kitchen, fires are carefully lit while cooks begin preparing breakfast for dozens of residents. The estate is still half asleep, yet work has already begun. Inside a great household, Every task follows a carefully organized rhythm. Floors must be cleaned, water must be carried, lanterns must be refilled, meals must be prepared, messages must be delivered, guests must be welcomed. Nothing happens by accident. Everything depends upon people whose names are rarely recorded. As the morning progresses, you follow a servant carrying fresh water through a maze of wooden hallways. The building seems endless. Rooms open into gardens. Gardens lead to covered walkways. Walkways connect to private chambers where members of the household conduct their daily affairs. The servant moves confidently. Every corner is familiar. Every responsibility has been repeated hundreds of times before. For many servants, this work begins at a young age. Some enter service because their families need income. Others are born into households where generations have served the same noble family. Loyalty often stretches across decades, sometimes even centuries. The work itself varies greatly. Senior attendants may manage finances, organize supplies, or supervise other workers. Younger servants often perform physically demanding tasks that keep the estate running smoothly from dawn until night. There is little opportunity for idleness. A single forgotten duty can affect dozens of people. By midday, the household becomes increasingly busy. Visitors arrive carrying letters, officials discuss local matters, family members move between rooms attended by servants who quietly anticipate every need. One brings tea, another prepares writing materials, a third arranges cushions before an important meeting. Their presence is almost invisible, and that is often the goal. The finest servants perform their duties so smoothly that others barely notice them at all. It is a skill requiring patience, observation, and remarkable self-control. Yet life inside these estates is not always harsh. For some, service provides stability that many villagers can only hope for. Meals are regular, shelter is secure, training may open opportunities unavailable elsewhere. Young attendants sometimes learn reading, writing, or specialized skills while serving educated households. The experience can shape an entire future. Still, the work remains demanding. As afternoon sunlight filters through the paper screens, a servant kneels carefully while repairing a torn section of fabric. Nearby, another records inventory lists on a scroll. Outside, gardeners trim shrubs and rake gravel into elegant patterns. Every task matters. Even the smallest detail contributes to the image of order and refinement expected from a noble household. As evening approaches, the estate glows softly beneath dozens of lanterns. Guests gather for conversation. Meals are served. Music drifts gently through the corridors. To an outsider, everything appears effortless. But behind every polished floor and carefully arranged room stands a network of workers whose labor makes this world possible. When the household finally settles into silence, many servants continue working. Lanterns must be extinguished, rooms prepared for tomorrow, supplies checked, doors secured. Only then can they rest, and even that rest may be brief, because another dawn is never far away. Standing beneath the quiet glow of the lanterns, you realize something history often forgets. Powerful households are remembered because of the people at the top. But they survived because of the people below. The hands that cleaned, carried, prepared, organized, repaired, and served. Hands that shaped daily life without ever appearing in official chronicles. The night deepens around the estate. A cool breeze moves through the gardens, stirring the pine branches overhead. And somewhere nearby, children are already dreaming of the lives they might one day live. Tomorrow, you will step into their world to discover what it was like to grow up in feudal Japan, where childhood itself looked very different from anything you know today. Another sunrise arrives. The eastern sky slowly brightens, washing the rooftops in pale gold while a thin veil of mist lingers over the fields. Morning birds dart between the branches of flowering plum trees, and somewhere nearby, the familiar sound of a wooden bucket being lowered into a well echoes through the quiet village. The day is beginning once again, but today, you see the village through younger eyes. As the first doors slide open, children begin to emerge from their homes. Some are no older than 5 or 6, others stand on the edge of adulthood, though by modern standards they would still be considered very young. There is laughter, there are smiles, yet childhood here is very different from the one you know. There are no school buses waiting along the road, no backpacks filled with colorful notebooks, no glowing screens competing for attention. Instead, every day begins with responsibility. A small boy carefully carries kindling toward the family hearth. His steps are slow and deliberate, balancing the bundle with both arms. Nearby, his younger sister scatters grain for the chickens before helping her mother rinse vegetables in cool well water. No one tells them to hurry, no one rewards them with allowance or praise. These simple tasks are part of growing up. Helping the family is not considered unusual, it is simply expected. As the morning unfolds, you notice how closely children observe the adults around them. Learning often happens through watching rather than formal instruction. A young girl studies the careful hands of her grandmother weaving a straw basket. A boy follows his father into the rice fields, silently copying the way he plants each seedling in neat rows. Knowledge is passed from one generation to the next almost without words. Mistakes are corrected gently, skills are repeated patiently. The rhythm of life itself becomes the classroom. Of course, education did exist. In towns and cities, children from samurai families often attended schools where they learned reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and the teachings of philosophy and ethics. Brush and ink became familiar companions. Beautiful handwriting was admired as much as clear thinking. Young samurai were also expected to develop discipline from an early age. Respect, loyalty, and self-control shaped their lessons as much as books did. For the children of farmers, artisans, and merchants, education was often more practical. Some attended temple schools, especially during the Edo period, where basic literacy became increasingly common. Others learned entirely within the family. A carpenter's child practiced shaping wood, a potter's son learned to knead clay, a merchant's daughter observed careful negotiations in the marketplace. Every family prepared its children for the life they were most likely to inherit. Afternoon sunlight spreads warmly across the village as groups of children gather briefly beneath a large tree. For a little while, work gives way to play. They chase one another along narrow paths, fold simple toys from paper, spin handmade tops across the packed earth, laugh as dragonflies dart through the summer air. Their games require almost nothing. A stick becomes a sword, pebbles become treasures. Imagination quietly fills the spaces where expensive toys do not exist. The moment is joyful, but short. Soon enough, older siblings return to carrying water, tending gardens, or helping prepare the evening meal. Even childhood follows the rhythm of duty. As the seasons change, children experience nature more directly than many people ever will. Spring fills the hills with blossoms. Summer brings buzzing insects and warm rivers. Autumn paints the forests with brilliant shades of crimson and gold. Winter blankets rooftops with snow, transforming familiar paths into silent white landscapes. The changing world becomes one of their greatest teachers. They learn patience from the harvest, resilience from difficult winters, gratitude from years when the crops are generous. As evening settles gently across the village, families gather once more inside their homes. Children kneel beside grandparents, listening to old stories told by the soft glow of an oil lamp, tales of clever fox spirits, ancient heroes, mountain gods. Long-forgotten travelers, these stories entertain, but they also preserve memory. Long before books reached every household, history often lived in spoken words, one generation quietly passing its wisdom to the next. As the youngest children slowly drift to sleep upon simple futons, you cannot help but notice how quickly they are expected to grow. Their days are filled with work, learning, and responsibility. Yet they still find time to marvel at falling cherry blossoms, to laugh beside quiet streams, to dream beneath skies filled with stars. Perhaps childhood has always balanced these two worlds, the innocence of wonder and the steady approach of adulthood. Outside, the night breeze moves gently through the bamboo once again. Tomorrow, your journey will carry you beyond the quiet villages and into the growing towns and bustling marketplaces of feudal Japan, where merchants, craftsmen, and city streets reveal another side of this remarkable world, one filled with opportunity, ambition, and change. Morning arrives with a different rhythm. For many days, you have awakened to the quiet sounds of villages, the splash of water in rice paddies, the gentle crackle of cooking fires, and the whisper of wind moving through bamboo forests. But today, those familiar sounds slowly fade behind you. The narrow country road widens, more travelers begin to appear. Pack horses carry bundles wrapped in straw. Merchants push wooden carts filled with pottery, cloth, and baskets. The scent of fresh pine is gradually replaced by something new, the smell of charcoal, cooking food, and busy streets. Ahead, a castle town slowly emerges from the morning mist, its rooftops stretch farther than you expected. Layered one behind another beneath the watchful shadow of a towering castle perched upon a stone foundation. This is a different world, a place where thousands of lives quietly intersect every single day. As you pass through the town gate, the atmosphere changes immediately. The streets are still peaceful by modern standards, yet compared with the countryside, they feel wonderfully alive. Wooden shop signs sway gently above the road. Storefront shutters slide open one after another. A tofu maker carefully arranges fresh blocks upon wooden trays. Nearby, the rich aroma of miso soup drifts from a small food stall, mingling with the comforting scent of steamed rice. A paper merchant hangs freshly crafted lanterns outside his workshop. A fabric seller unfolds bolts of indigo-dyed cotton that catch the soft morning light. Everywhere you look, hands are busy. The merchants of feudal Japan rarely held the highest social status, but they played an increasingly important role in shaping daily life. While farmers produced food and artisans created goods, merchants connected them all. They carried rice between provinces, they sold paper, tea, ceramics, silk, tools, candles, medicines, and countless other necessities. Without them, towns would have struggled to survive. As the morning grows brighter, customers begin arriving. No one rushes. Transactions unfold with quiet patience. A merchant carefully measures rice using wooden containers. Another examines a customer's coins before wrapping purchased goods in cloth. Trust matters as much as money. A good reputation can sustain a business for generations. A dishonest one may disappear almost overnight. As you wander deeper into the streets, the city reveals more of its character. Artisans work behind open shop fronts where anyone passing can quietly observe. A blacksmith rhythmically shapes glowing iron. A fan maker paints delicate landscapes onto folded paper. A candle maker patiently pours warm wax into waiting molds. There is something deeply calming about watching skilled hands repeat familiar movements perfected over decades. These streets are more than marketplaces. They are living workshops. The sounds themselves create an unusual harmony, wood striking wood, gentle conversation. Sandals brushing packed earth, the distant ringing of a temple bell, the occasional laughter of children weaving between shoppers before disappearing into a side street. Nothing feels chaotic, only busy. As afternoon approaches, you arrive beside a narrow canal flowing through the town. Small wooden boats quietly unload cargo, sacks of rice, bundles of firewood, ceramic jars, bales of cloth. Waterways are the lifeblood of many growing towns, allowing heavy goods to move far more easily than rough mountain roads ever could. Nearby, an elegant tea house welcomes travelers seeking a brief moment of rest. Inside, soft voices mingle with the delicate fragrance of freshly prepared green tea. Guests admire simple flower arrangements and carefully arranged scrolls hanging upon the walls. Conversation flows as gently as the tea itself. Business is discussed, poetry is shared, news from distant provinces quietly spreads from table to table. For a little while, the busy world outside feels wonderfully distant, as evening slowly settles across the castle town. Hundreds of paper lanterns begin glowing along the streets. Their warm light reflects softly upon polished wooden storefronts. Shopkeepers carefully close their shutters after another successful day. The marketplace gradually grows quieter, yet the town never becomes completely still. Some bakers continue preparing tomorrow's bread. Night watchmen begin their patient rounds. Travelers arrive late, searching for inns before the gates close. Life continues, even after sunset. Standing upon a small wooden bridge overlooking the lantern-lit canal, you realize something remarkable. These growing towns are quietly changing feudal Japan. Ideas travel here alongside goods. New fashions appear, fresh opportunities emerge. Although tradition remains strong, the world is slowly becoming more connected than ever before. The peaceful villages, noble estates, and bustling streets are no longer separate stories. They are threads woven into the same great tapestry, a tapestry that continues to grow with every passing season. The evening breeze carries the distant sound of a flute across the rooftops as lanterns shimmer gently upon the water. Tomorrow, your journey will take you beyond the marketplaces and into the stranger corners of daily life, where ancient customs, surprising traditions, and forgotten beliefs may seem unfamiliar to modern eyes, yet once made perfect sense to the people who lived them. Another gentle morning begins. The castle town wakes slowly beneath a blanket of pale mist. Shopkeepers slide open their wooden shutters, sweeping yesterday's dust into the street before arranging their goods with quiet care. Temple bells echo softly across the rooftops, while the scent of fresh tea drifts from nearby homes. By now, much of feudal Japan has begun to feel familiar. You understand the rhythm of the villages, you recognize the quiet discipline of the samurai. You have walked the crowded marketplaces and rested beside peaceful canals, yet beneath these ordinary moments lies another world. A world shaped by customs that would seem deeply unfamiliar to modern eyes. Some may surprise you, others may leave you quietly puzzled. But for the people who lived here, these traditions were simply part of everyday life. As you continue through the streets, you notice that almost everyone bows when greeting another person. At first, this no longer seems unusual. Then you begin to realize just how much meaning a single bow can hold, a slight nod between friends, a deeper bow for an elder, an even lower bow when offering an apology or expressing profound gratitude. Entire conversations begin before a single word is spoken. Respect is expressed through movement itself, in your own time. A handshake or casual greeting often comes naturally. Here, your posture speaks first. A little farther along, you are invited into a family's home. Before stepping across the wooden threshold, everyone quietly removes their sandals. You have seen this before, but today, you understand why. The inside of the home is considered a clean and peaceful space. Tatami mats, carefully woven from straw, are not merely flooring. They are part of daily life. People sit upon them, eat upon them, sleep upon them. Walking across them with outdoor footwear would bring dirt into the very heart of the household, a simple custom, yet one rooted in deep respect. As the afternoon approaches, preparations begin for a neighborhood festival. Colorful banners flutter gently above the streets. Children help decorate small wooden floats with flowers and paper ornaments. Women arrange offerings of rice, fruit, and sake. Before a tiny roadside shrine, musicians quietly tune flutes and drums beneath the shade of a large tree. The atmosphere is joyful, yet also deeply meaningful. Festivals are not simply celebrations. They are expressions of gratitude. Many honor local deities believed to protect villages, ensure good harvests, or watch over families throughout the changing seasons. Religion, community, and daily life blend together so naturally that separating them becomes almost impossible. As evening draws closer, another custom quietly unfolds. Neighbors exchange carefully chosen seasonal gifts, a basket of fresh vegetables, handmade sweets, beautifully folded cloth. The value of the gift matters less than the thought behind it. These small exchanges strengthen friendships and quietly remind everyone that no household truly stands alone. Elsewhere, you notice written names displayed upon wooden tablets inside a family home. These honor ancestors who have passed away. Fresh flowers are placed nearby, a stick of incense burns gently. Family members pause for only a moment, a quiet bow, a whispered prayer. Then life continues. The past remains close here, not as something frightening, but as something lovingly remembered. There are customs, however, that may seem much stranger to modern visitors. Blackened teeth, known among certain noble women and married women during different periods, were once considered beautiful and respectable. Eyebrows might be shaved and redrawn higher upon the forehead according to changing fashions. Certain hairstyles required hours of careful preparation and sleeping upon specially designed wooden headrests to preserve them overnight. Beauty followed traditions very different from today's ideals. Even silence itself carries meaning. Long pauses during conversation are rarely uncomfortable. No one rushes to fill every quiet moment with words. Listening patiently is often seen as a sign of wisdom. The absence of speech becomes another language entirely. As twilight paints the rooftops in warm shades of amber, festival lanterns begin glowing throughout the streets. Families gather beneath them, smiling softly as musicians play slow melodies upon bamboo flutes. Children chase drifting fireflies while elders watch with quiet contentment. You realize that many customs only seem strange because they belong to another time. If you had been born here, they would have felt perfectly ordinary. Perhaps someone from feudal Japan would find your own world equally bewildering. Bright screens glowing late into the night, meals eaten while walking, people rushing through conversations without truly listening. Every age has its habits. Every culture its quiet mysteries. The lanterns flicker gently as the festival slowly winds to its peaceful close. Tomorrow, another ordinary part of life will reveal unexpected surprises. You will discover how people stayed remarkably clean without modern bathrooms, plumbing, or the comforts you may never have imagined living without. Another peaceful morning slowly unfolds. The festival lanterns that glowed so warmly the night before have long since been extinguished. Their wooden frames sway gently in the cool dawn breeze, while the streets of the town quietly return to their familiar rhythm. Shopkeepers sweep the pathways. Birds gather along tiled rooftops. The scent of fresh cedar drifts through the crisp morning air after another calm night. As you continue your journey through feudal Japan, you begin to wonder about something surprisingly ordinary. After days spent walking muddy roads, working beside flooded rice fields, traveling through forests, and sleeping upon simple straw mats, how did people stay clean? Without hot showers, without plumbing, without soap as you know it today, without toothbrushes lined neatly beside a sink, the answer is quieter, and perhaps more thoughtful, than you might expect. Long before sunrise, a farmer kneels beside a wooden basin outside his home. The water is cool, almost cold. He cups it gently in his hands and washes his face before beginning another day's work. Nearby, his wife rinses her hands with equal care before preparing the morning meal. Cleanliness is not treated as luxury. It is simply part of daily life. Across feudal Japan, water holds a special place, not only for practical reasons, but also for spiritual ones. Both everyday habits and religious traditions encourage people to wash before entering sacred spaces or participating in important ceremonies. Purity is often seen as a quiet form of respect. As the morning grows brighter, you follow a narrow stone path leading toward a public bathhouse. From the outside, the building appears simple: a wooden entrance, a gently rising column of steam, the faint scent of fresh cedar drifting into the street. Inside, warm water fills a large wooden bathing pool. Families and neighbors gather peacefully after long days of labor, allowing tired muscles to relax beneath comforting heat. Conversation remains gentle. There is little hurry. Bathing is not merely about removing dirt, it is also a moment of rest, a pause between one day's work and the next. Unlike modern routines, people carefully wash themselves before entering the shared bath. Buckets of warm water are poured over the body. Cloths gently scrub away dust and sweat. Only after becoming clean does anyone quietly step into the larger pool. The water itself remains clear for everyone. It is a custom built upon consideration for others. As you leave the bathhouse, sunlight dances softly through the leaves of nearby maple trees. Women rinse clothing beside flowing streams, rubbing fabric carefully against smooth stones before hanging garments where fresh breezes can dry them naturally. Nothing feels rushed. Even washing clothes follows the steady rhythm of the seasons. Soap, as you might imagine it today, is uncommon. Instead, people often rely upon natural materials. Wood ash mixed with water creates gentle cleansing solutions. Rice bran sometimes helps polish skin. Plant fibers serve as simple brushes. Nature quietly provides many of the tools required for daily life. Dental care may surprise you as well. Small chewing sticks made from aromatic wood help clean the teeth. Salt is sometimes used as a gentle abrasive. Mouths are rinsed carefully after meals. Although modern dentistry remains centuries away, many people still understand the value of basic hygiene. Hair demands equal attention. Long black hair is washed carefully, then combed with beautifully crafted wooden combs that remove dust and tangles. Natural oils help maintain its healthy appearance. Among noble families, elaborate hairstyles require remarkable patience. Hairpins, combs, and ornaments transform everyday grooming into an art form. The work can take hours. As afternoon settles quietly across the town, you notice something else. The streets themselves are remarkably well cared for. Neighbors sweep the areas outside their homes. Gardens are trimmed. Courtyards remain orderly. Keeping one's surroundings clean reflects personal discipline as much as practical necessity. A tidy home quietly honors both guests and family alike. Of course, life is far from perfect. Illness still spreads. Clean water is not always available. Many people endure difficult conditions beyond their control, yet considering the time in which they lived, the importance placed upon bathing, washing, and cleanliness may surprise many modern visitors. As evening approaches, steam rises once more from the bathhouse roof. After another long day, villagers arrive carrying small towels over their shoulders. Morning arrives almost without a sound. A pale mist drifts through the towering cedar forest, wrapping ancient tree trunks in a quiet silver veil. Tiny drops of dew cling to moss-covered stones, while somewhere beyond the trees, the slow ringing of a temple bell echoes through the valley. Its deep voice lingers in the cool air, then fades into silence once again. By now, you have walked the villages, crossed mountain roads, shared simple meals, and rested beneath humble roofs. You have seen how people work, how they build, how they raise their families, but today, you step into something less visible. Not a place, but a way of seeing the world in feudal Japan. Religion is not confined behind temple walls. It quietly accompanies everyday life. It lives beside the kitchen hearth. It stands beneath old trees. It flows with rivers. It watches from mountain paths. For many people, two traditions exist side by side. One is Shinto, the ancient belief that the natural world is filled with kami, sacred spirits or presences connected to mountains, rivers, forests, animals, and even remarkable old trees. The other is Buddhism, a faith that arrived centuries earlier from the Asian mainland, bringing teachings about compassion, suffering, impermanence, and the quiet search for inner peace. Rather than choosing one or the other, many families embrace both. A child may be blessed at a Shinto shrine, a funeral may be held at a Buddhist temple. The two traditions weave gently together, like threads in the same piece of cloth. As you continue along the forest path, a bright red torii gate appears between the trees, simple, elegant, timeless. Crossing beneath it feels strangely different, not because the air changes, but because the gate quietly marks the boundary between the ordinary world and a sacred one. Beyond it, a narrow stone path leads toward a small shrine. A wooden offering box rests beneath the roof. Fresh branches have been carefully arranged nearby. Someone has recently left a few grains of rice and a small cup of sake as an offering. The shrine is silent, yet it feels wonderfully alive. A villager approaches slowly. Before praying, they stop beside a stone basin filled with clear water. Using a wooden ladle, they gently rinse one hand, then the other, finally touching a little water to their lips before returning the ladle. Only then do they step forward. Two respectful bows, two gentle claps, a moment of quiet prayer, one final bow. The entire ritual lasts only a minute, yet every movement carries generations of meaning. As afternoon sunlight filters through the branches, you arrive at a Buddhist temple resting peacefully against the mountainside. Its weathered wooden halls seem to grow naturally from the surrounding forest. Inside, the air is cool. The fragrance of incense drifts gently through the quiet room. Monks move almost silently across polished wooden floors, their simple robes brushing softly with every step. One monk strikes a large bronze bell. Its deep vibration fills the temple, then slowly disappears. You find yourself listening long after the sound has ended. Perhaps that is the lesson, not simply to hear, but to notice. Buddhist teachings often remind people that nothing lasts forever. Cherry blossoms bloom, then fall. Seasons arrive, then quietly depart. Joy and sorrow both pass like clouds across the sky. Accepting this constant change becomes part of living wisely. Outside the temple, villagers continue their ordinary lives, yet many carry small beliefs that modern visitors might call superstitions. Travelers choose lucky days to begin long journeys. Families avoid certain numbers or directions believed to bring misfortune. Protective charms hang above doorways. Children are reminded not to whistle after dark, for fear it might invite wandering spirits or unwanted visitors. Whether every story is believed hardly matters, the stories themselves help. Explain a world filled with uncertainty, storms, illness, poor harvests, earthquakes. When life offers few clear answers, traditions often provide quiet comfort as evening approaches. Dozens of tiny paper lanterns begin glowing along the stone steps leading to the shrine. The fading sunlight paints the forest in warm shades of amber and gold. Leaves rustle softly overhead. The breeze carries the scent of cedar, incense, and distant rain. You pause for one final look. There is something deeply peaceful about this place, not because it promises certainty, but because it gently accepts mystery. Perhaps that is why these beliefs endured for so many centuries. They reminded people that not everything must be explained. Some things are simply experienced. The moon rises slowly above the treetops, bathing the shrine in pale silver light. Tomorrow, your peaceful journey will briefly enter one of the darkest chapters of feudal Japan. The quiet villages and sacred temples will give way to battlefields, where loyalty, courage, fear, and survival shaped the lives of countless samurai caught between honor and the harsh realities of war. Morning comes reluctantly. The peaceful sounds that have accompanied your journey for so many days are still there. Birds greet the dawn from the cedar branches. Mist drifts gently through the valleys. A cool breeze carries the familiar scent of damp earth and pine, yet something feels different. The road ahead is strangely empty. The merchants who usually fill the highways are nowhere to be seen. Farmers pause their work more often, quietly looking toward the distant hills. Even the temple bell seems softer this morning, as though the valley itself is listening. For the first time since your journey began, you sense that peace can be fragile. Far beyond the quiet village, two rival samurai clans prepare for battle. Not every year of feudal Japan was filled with conflict. Long stretches of peace allowed towns to flourish and families to build ordinary lives. But during earlier centuries, especially throughout the Sengo period, rival lords struggled to expand their lands and protect what they already possessed. For ordinary people, these struggles were never distant stories. They could arrive without warning. As you continue along the road, you encounter a stream of villagers carrying bundles on their backs. An elderly man leads a small ox pulling a cart loaded with sacks of rice. A mother holds the hand of her youngest child while balancing blankets across her shoulders. No one speaks very loudly. Their destination is uncertain. When armies moved through the countryside, villages sometimes emptied before the soldiers arrived. People hoped to avoid becoming trapped between forces far beyond their control. By midday, you reach a hillside overlooking a broad valley. Far below, banners ripple gently in the wind. Rows of tents stretch across open fields. Columns of ash rise from carefully tended cooking fires. From this distance, the camp appears almost peaceful, but appearances can be deceiving. An army spends far more time waiting than fighting. Soldiers repair sandals, sharpen tools, cook rice, care for horses, mend damaged armor. Messengers quietly ride between commanders carrying instructions that may change before sunset. The long hours before battle are often filled with ordinary tasks. Patience becomes another form of discipline. Nearby, a young samurai quietly sits beneath a pine tree. His helmet rests beside him. Instead of polishing his sword, he unfolds a small letter. Perhaps it came from his family. Perhaps it contains the last words he will read from home for many months. He studies every line slowly before folding it with great care. In that quiet moment, he no longer appears like the fearless warrior celebrated in legends. He simply looks like someone wondering what tomorrow may bring. As afternoon passes, drums begin sounding across the valley, deep, steady, measured. Commanders organize their formations, spearmen stand together in long disciplined lines, archers check the strings of their bows, horsemen quietly adjust saddles and reins. Every movement has been practiced countless times. Victory depends as much upon coordination as courage. The battle itself, when it finally begins, is far less glorious than stories often suggest. Dust rises into the air, voices disappear beneath the pounding of drums. Confusion spreads quickly, orders become difficult to hear, friends lose sight of one another, fear visits nearly everyone. Regardless of experience, the outcome often depends upon leadership, preparation, weather, supplies, and simple fortune as much as individual bravery. For those watching from nearby villages, the greatest concern is not honor. It is survival. Fields may be trampled, storehouses emptied, homes damaged. A poor harvest following a campaign can bring hardship long after the soldiers have departed. War reaches far beyond the battlefield. As evening slowly approaches, the fighting quiets, the valley grows strangely still, smoke drifts upward into the fading sky, messengers once again ride between camps, the wounded are carried gently toward waiting healers. Those who remain gather around small fires, speaking little. Even victory carries a heavy cost. History often remembers the names of victorious generals. It records famous battles and changing borders, yet countless ordinary lives pass almost unnoticed. The farmer whose harvest never returned, the child who waited for a parent, the craftsman whose workshop stood empty, the servant who rebuilt another damaged home. These stories rarely appear in official records, but together, they form the true weight of every conflict. As darkness settles over the valley, the stars slowly emerge above the silent hills. The same stars shine over both armies, over every village, over every lonely traveler still making their way home. Standing there beneath the quiet night sky, you realize that peace is often easiest to appreciate after witnessing how easily it can disappear. The wind gently carries away the last traces of smoke. Tomorrow, your journey will leave the shadows of war behind once more. You will discover another side of feudal Japan, one filled with quiet gardens, delicate crafts, changing seasons, and the simple beauty that ordinary people found even in lives shaped by hardship. Morning returns with remarkable gentleness. The distant echoes of conflict have faded into memory, carried away like autumn leaves upon a slow-moving stream. Once again, the valleys awaken not to the sound of marching feet, but to birds greeting the sunrise from cedar branches and the quiet murmur of water flowing through narrow irrigation channels. The world seems to breathe more easily. So do you. After witnessing the hardships of feudal Japan, it would be easy to believe that life was defined only by struggle, long hours in the fields, strict social rules, dangerous roads, uncertain harvests. Yet that would leave an important part of the story untold, even during difficult times. People still found beauty, not in grand monuments or endless luxury, but in ordinary moments that quietly filled the spaces between work and responsibility. As you wander along a narrow country path, the first cherry blossoms begin drifting gently through the morning air. They fall without hurry, one by one. A farmer pauses for only a heartbeat before continuing his work. Watching a single blossom settle upon the surface of a flooded rice field, he smiles softly, then returns to planting. The moment lasts only seconds, yet perhaps that is precisely why it matters. In feudal Japan, many people understood that beauty was often temporary. The blossoms would soon disappear. Summer would arrive, another season would quietly take their place. Rather than resisting change, they learned to appreciate it. As the morning grows brighter, you reach a small garden tucked behind a modest wooden home. It is not large. There are no extravagant fountains or towering statues. Instead, smooth stones rest beside carefully trimmed shrubs, a tiny pond reflects the pale blue sky, a single maple tree leans gracefully over the water, its leaves dancing with every gentle breeze. Nothing seems accidental, every detail invites stillness. Gardens like these were designed not simply to impress visitors, but to encourage quiet reflection. Sometimes the smallest spaces offered the greatest peace. Nearby, an elderly craftsman patiently shapes a block of cedar into a wooden bowl. His tools move slowly. Almost silently, thin curls of fragrant wood gather around his feet. There is no sign of frustration, no rush to finish, only years of practiced hands working with quiet confidence. Across feudal Japan, countless artisans devoted themselves to perfecting simple objects: pottery, lacquerware, paper, baskets, textiles. Each carried something of its maker within it, not perfection, but care. By afternoon, laughter drifts from the village square. Today is a small local festival. Celebrating the changing season, children chase colorful paper streamers fluttering in the breeze. Musicians play slow melodies upon bamboo flutes while gentle drumbeats rise and fall like distant waves. Neighbors share rice cakes and warm tea beneath temporary shelters decorated with fresh flowers. No one appears hurried, no one seems concerned with owning more than anyone else. For a little while, simply being together is enough. As the sun begins its slow descent, smoke rises from hundreds of cooking fires across the valley. Families prepare another evening meal. The familiar scent of grilled fish mingles with steaming rice and freshly harvested vegetables. Someone quietly hums an old folk song while stirring a pot above the fire. A grandmother carefully teaches a child how to fold cloth after washing. These moments will never appear in history books. No famous battle will remember them. No official record will preserve them. Yet they may have been the moments people treasured most. Later, as twilight settles across the countryside, you find yourself sitting beside a quiet river. The water reflects the fading colors of the evening sky. Dragonflies skim gently across its surface before disappearing into the reeds. Far away, a temple bell sounds once. Then silence returns. You begin to understand something that has quietly followed you throughout this journey. The people of feudal Japan did not wait for perfect lives before allowing themselves moments of happiness. They celebrated small harvests, admired changing seasons, shared simple meals, created beautiful objects with ordinary materials, found comfort in familiar routines. Beauty was never separate from hardship, the two often existed side by side. Perhaps that is why these peaceful moments feel so meaningful. They were earned. The first stars begin appearing overhead as cool evening air settles gently across the fields. Tomorrow, your journey will move toward its final reflections. You will discover the countless comforts of the modern world that people living here could scarcely imagine. Comforts so ordinary today that they often pass unnoticed, until you imagine living without them. Night settles gently over the valley. The last traces of sunlight fade behind distant mountains, leaving only a deepening blue sky scattered with early stars. A soft wind moves through the bamboo, creating a sound like quiet whispers passing through the dark. By now, you have lived through many sides of feudal Japan: the discipline of samurai households, the exhaustion of farmers, the quiet labor of servants, the fragile beauty of towns, temples, and seasons. And yet, as peaceful as much of this world can feel, there is a different awareness that slowly begins to settle in, a subtle realization of what is missing. As you sit beside a small wooden home, the glow of an oil lamp flickers softly inside. Its light is warm, gentle, alive in a way that feels almost fragile. There is no switch to brighten the room, no instant illumination to push back the darkness, only flame, carefully tended, and silence, carefully accepted. One of the first things you would miss from your own time is speed. In your world, distance shrinks with wheels and engines. Here, a journey across valleys can take days. Messages travel only as fast as a horse can run or a traveler can walk. Time stretches differently. Each moment feels longer, not because life is slow in a peaceful sense, but because everything must be done step by step. As night deepens, you notice the absence of sound you once took for granted. No distant machines humming in the background, no metal structures vibrating with electricity, no glowing screens calling for attention. Instead, there is wind, water, faint movement of insects in the grass, a world that speaks more softly and requires you to listen more carefully. Inside nearby homes, people sleep on simple futons laid across tatami mats. There are no soft mattresses with lead comfort, no adjustable beds. No climate control to shape the air around them. In winter, thick clothing and shared warmth become essential. In summer, open windows invite night breezes and sometimes insects along with them. Comfort exists, but it is closely tied to nature itself, not separate from it. Another absence becomes clear as you continue walking through the quiet village paths. Medicine, as you know it today, does not exist in the same form. There are herbal remedies, traditional healing methods, experienced hands passed down through generations, but there is uncertainty. Illness that would be minor today can become dangerous here. Recovery depends on time, care, and sometimes simply fortune. Life is more fragile, and because of that, each healthy day carries quiet value. You pass a small workshop where a craftsman still works late into the night by lantern light. His tools are simple, his focus absolute. There is no digital distraction pulling his attention away, no constant stream of noise competing for his thoughts, only the task in front of him. Wood, stone, cloth, fire, the materials of a world built entirely by hand. Even communication carries a different weight. Letters are written slowly with brush and ink. Every character requires intention. Mistakes cannot be erased easily. Words are chosen with care because they must travel far before ever being heard again. There is something almost irreversible about expression here, which makes silence feel safer and speech more meaningful. As you walk further, you hear faint laughter from a nearby home. Families gathered around a small meal, simple dishes of rice, vegetables, and fish shared quietly beneath the glow of a single lamp. No background television, no constant notifications, no overlapping conversations from distant rooms, only presence, shared space, shared time. Yet even in this calm, you begin to understand what modern life offers that this world cannot. Immediate connection to distant people, knowledge available in seconds, comfort that adjusts to every need, medical care that can save lives once considered lost. Electric light that removes the boundaries of night, speed that collapses distance, choice that expands possibility. These things do not exist here in the same way, and yet life continues, not lacking meaning, but shaped differently. As the night grows deeper, the stars above seem brighter than you remember. Without city lights to soften them, the sky feels vast in a way that is almost overwhelming. You realize that people here have known this sky far longer than modern life has existed. They have lived beneath it, worked beneath it, loved, feared, and dreamed beneath it, and in that quiet thought, there is a strange sense of connection. Different worlds, different comforts, different limits, yet the same sky. The wind slows, the village becomes still. Only distant crickets remain as company. Tomorrow, your journey reaches its final stage, a gentle departure from feudal Japan itself, a return not just to the present, but to reflection on what it truly means to live with ease. and what it once meant to live without it. The night is quiet now, almost too quiet. The wind moves gently through the bamboo, brushing across empty paths and half-lit rooftops. Lanterns that once guided evening footsteps have faded into soft embers. The village, the fields, the distant roads, all rest beneath a sky that feels wider than before. You stand at the edge of a familiar path, the same earth you have walked through. Villages, forests, towns, and valleys now feels different, not because it has changed, but because you have. Feudal Japan no longer feels like a distant story, it feels like a place you have lived inside. You remember the mornings that began before sunrise. The farmers bending quietly in flooded fields. The samurai moving through mist-covered roads, the merchants filling narrow streets with life, the servants working silently behind wooden doors, the children laughing beneath trees that no longer exist in the same way, each life separate, yet connected by the same fragile rhythm of survival. As you look back, there is no final moment of farewell, no dramatic ending, only continuation, because life here never truly paused, it simply moved forward. One season at a time, you begin walking slowly along the road once more. The ground beneath your feet feels familiar now, not because it is unchanged, but because you have learned to see it differently, in your mind. Modern life feels distant for a moment. Electric lights, fast transport, endless information, comfort so constant they are often forgotten, and yet, here, their absence revealed something unexpected. How much effort once shaped every simple act, how much patience lived inside every daily routine, how much meaning was carried in ordinary things, a bowl of rice, a shared meal, a carefully written letter, a lantern lit at dusk. Nothing was automatic, everything was earned. As you continue walking, the sky begins to lighten again, not with sunrise, but with reflection, a soft blending of memory and imagination. The villages you pass through feel both real and distant at the same time, almost like echoes carried through time. You realize that history is not only about rulers, wars, or famous events, it is about people who never appeared in textbooks, people who woke up every morning, worked through the day, and hoped for a better tomorrow, people whose lives were simple, but never meaningless. The path ahead grows brighter, slowly, gently, as if the world itself is letting you return. You feel no sudden break between past and present. Only a quiet shift, like waking from a long dream you do not want to forget. Feudal Japan does not disappear, it fades, softly, into memory, into imagination, into understanding, and as the last traces of mist dissolve above the fields, you carry something back with you, not just images of samurai, temples, and villages, but the awareness of a different way of life, a slower rhythm, a closer relationship with nature. A world where survival and beauty often existed side by side. The road ends where it began, silence settles one final time, and then only the present remains. But perhaps now, you see it differently too, because once you have walked through another world, even in thought, you never quite see your own the same way again. The journey is over. But the reflection continues, somewhere beyond memory. Feudal Japan still exists in stories, in imagination, in history books, and in quiet places where the past is still remembered. And maybe, if you listen closely enough in the stillness of night, you can still hear the distant sound of footsteps on an old dirt road, carried gently through time.